Thank you for tuning in to the Edelex podcast. We are an edtech whose mission is to surface learning outcomes, digital assets, and the power of individual achievement. Each episode features thought-provoking conversations with global technology leaders and educators, where we discuss how we can deliver better outcomes for 21st century learners.
Hi, I'm Dan McFadden, Managing Director of Edelex, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Will Stubley. Will is the co-founder and co-CEO of Year 13. Will, along with his business partner, Saxon Phipps, has dedicated over 15 years of his life to supporting young people, striving to close the gap on a 20th century approach to career-related learning and transition to a skills-based economy. Will is an active member of the Tech Council of Australia and is also a member of the newly established Mining and Automotive Jobs and Skills Council. Will, wonderful to see you again, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Okay, Dan. Yeah, thanks for having us, and nice to see you again.
Yeah. Let's dive right into it. So first, tell us a bit about Year 13. I know you focus on a critical point in learners' lives. So can you tell us about that, the services and products you offer, and why you've chosen that particular area to focus on?
Yeah, cool. So Year 13, as you sort of mentioned, has been around for a little while now. It was first founded, I guess, because of some personal experiences. So my business partner and I both had really different journeys after school, but where we linked up was one of our mutual friends was having a particularly hard transition out. And unfortunately got a little bit too much for her, and she ended up taking her own life. And so, I was actually first year after school. Sax is 2 years older than me. So we were sort of going through that, school transition journey ourselves. And, we saw firsthand where that experience wasn't completely unique to just us. The more that we sort of were talking to people, whether it was our friends or, people around our circles, what's meant to be a really exciting period of a young person's life is often not quite that. And so when we first launched, it wasn't really business, to be honest. Like, I was at uni doing engineering and Sax at TAFE and traveling around the world and doing all those sorts of things. But we started essentially a blog talking about all the cool things you can do after school. Really it was us figuring out what our friends are doing and writing about it. And we had 3 verticals of work, study, travel. That was sort of what we thought. If you're going to, there's sort of the 3 options, either those 3 or do nothing. So we sort of based it around that. And that was when Facebook was sort of really on the up. And so we were able to build an audience, not only quite quickly, but pretty much for free, which for all the marketers out there know it's a bit different nowadays. It's very much pay to play. But what was happening was people would write in and say, hey, read the article about getting an apprenticeship, or, stuffed up my exams, so you can get into uni from alternative pathways. Can you actually help me do that? And that's when we realized there was a bigger gap in the market, not just in terms of information, but actually facilitating that decision-making process and sort of bridging that gap of actually how do you get somewhere. And that was probably 2015, 16 when we sort of turned into more of what we are now. And then obviously a lot's happened between then and now. But really, we've had the same mission the entire time, which is upgrade the school to work transition. And that's really been sort of a North Star focus around helping young people live happier, more fulfilling lives. And, we know that one of the best lead indicators of that is meaningful work. So it's always been based around that. The thing that we found was, that decision-making process isn't purely the students or the young person. There's a lot of other stakeholders that are involved in that. And so what we've spent the last sort of, I guess, 7-8 years doing is really looking to bring together that ecosystem. And so we're now Australia's largest sort of school to work platform, where in terms of scale, we've got 1.5 million students on the platform. We reach between 3 to 4 million students a month for our social channels.
Wow.
We've got over 1,200 high schools that use our software called Career Tools, with like statewide rollouts in ACT in South Australia. We've worked with a little bit over 100 industry partners, ranging from Tech Council sort of associations, Engineers Australia, but also organisations like Microsoft. And we've got about 100 to 150,000 parents on the platform a month. So we've sort of hit an interesting period where there's quite a lot of people that are really interested in helping solve this. And it's been one of the unique aspects of our growth is almost everyone has a story about the challenges. And so we've been very fortunate with having amazing people around us that just want to help solve the problem. So yeah, it's sort of a bit of a summary of where we are.
That's fantastic, Will. And from such a horrible personal tragedy, to see that inspiration ultimately affect in a positive way. So many, 1.5 million learners. That's amazing, Will. So congratulations and thank you, on behalf of today's youth. And it's interesting for me personally, having nieces and nephews around this age and seeing them go through the struggles. I think back that when I was going through uni and acknowledging my own privileged upbringing, but it seems like the world was a much simpler place back then. And even, thinking back to your time. So I think for today, for the youth today, I see that there's a much wider range of pathways that they can explore and pursue. So what sort of insights around pathways and opportunities are you seeing from the experience of those, more than 1 million users in the school, all those schools and the parents?
Yeah, look, I think it's one of the things that's probably always been fairly complex and multifaceted in terms of pathways. But I think traditionally the pathways to get there was a little bit more structured in terms of, you had trades and uni, and you probably had more of a economy that was based on, one or two occupation sort of careers. And I think it's actually the Foundation for Young Australians research that they estimate Gen Z on average will have over 17 different occupations in four or five different industries. So you're talking about a very transient, career path. And that's starting to then permeate into the broader, I guess, structure of things, whether that's education and government and employment sort of structures where, almost every country, definitely in Australia, we're seeing skill shortages. We're seeing a really tight employment market where, people are very happy to recruit from cross-sector. And so, that creates a whole different dynamic for not only, the systems of education and things like that, but actually for the student or for the individual themselves. It means that their pathways and opportunities is so much broader. So if you take it back down to what we do at school level, trying to figure out what you want to do, there's still a bit of, angst and stress and anxiety around, especially the ATAR and, what you do straight after is going to dictate the rest of your life. And, the reality of that is obviously very different, but starting to permeate down that people are realizing how transient, careers can be. But, still there's a big bias towards university, and which is cool. That's fine. But you see that when you actually do start to educate and inform around vocational pathways, alternative pathways, the interest is really there. So, one of the things that we advocate for, across the board is just really education around pathways and careers and employment opportunities makes a huge difference at that age group, because really what you don't know, and their exposure to pathways is really their parents, their friends' parents. So yeah, I think things are changing, definitely. The bit that we've seen over the last probably 4 to 5 years has been probably a bit of a more swing towards the vocational system. Yeah, which I think it still probably needs to swing a little bit further to get that equilibrium, but starting to get there.
Interesting, really interesting. I'd like to build on some of those comments that you made, Will. So, recognizing that attending university is no longer the primary goal for a number of students than it once was, and it's no longer, that degree is no longer the signal to hire to employers that it once was. And so we have an interesting situation where there's this widening chasm between employers who are having an incredible difficult time finding employees with the proper skills. So the Manpower Group released their latest survey yesterday that revealed that the percentage of companies that are struggling to find prospective employees with the right skills is at an all-time high, 77% of companies, and it's even higher here in Australia. and yet here we have these graduates who are struggling to get their first job, or first meaningful job in whatever industry they may be interested in pursuing. And so it's a bit of that catch-22. Employers want people with the skills, and the graduates are saying, well, give me a job so I can get these skills, or so I can prove that I have these skills. So I'll throw a very broad question. How do you think the institutions, employers, and the students should be tackling this challenge?
Mm. So I think
you can answer that in 7 parts too. By the way,
that's fine. That's good. I think the reality is it's getting driven out of necessity via industry. So, like I said before, because the employment market's so tight and skill shortages are so chronic, industry is sort of forcing the hand of the rest of the market, because it's going, this is what we need. Yeah. And so what that's creating is, I think, probably quite a big macro shift from a traditionally very qualification-based system to more of a skills-based system, where to that point, if you think about a qual, it's sort of a stack of skills or competencies, and so it's sort of breaking the qual into units. And from an employer point of view, whether it's even us hiring, but like you say it more broadly, is if they've got a capability to perform the function, that's sort of trumping the overall qualification that someone has. And so they do work hand in hand, because you think about qual as a stack of competencies, but it's getting more to a unit level. And so why that sort of a trend that I don't think is going to go away is to that point before, if someone's going to have up to 17 different occupations, you need something that's transferable. And qualifications and I don't think qualifications is going to go anywhere, but I think it's sort of this system in tandem that's going, well, you can break it down more to a unit level, where it's going, well, this occupation needs these combination of skills, where you don't need the whole qualification. So in terms of efficiencies and even investment and stuff, time, money, all that sort of stuff, not only from industry are they driving, I think the consumer, the student's going to drive that as well, going like, well, why do I need the rest if that's not going to be valued? So I think education's in a really interesting time. I think it shouldn't be scary, I don't think, for institutions. It should be really embraced, because it leans more towards something I truly believe in. It's that lifelong learner sort of concept. And so I think models might be changed a little bit, but I think the need for education is not going to go away. It's just the sort of structure around it.
No, that's right. And yes, I totally agreed with the lifelong learning, the importance of that. And even the federal government here, just over the last few days, announced a series of micro-credentials from a range of different institutions to really plug those gaps and help build skills in individuals. So we're certainly seeing this recognition from the government as well. So certainly another key stakeholder. Let's drill down a bit more on the learners, and obviously your ultimately the people you're trying to help with your solutions. Last year, we commissioned some market research of college or university graduates that identified that only 33% of them feel comfortable voicing their skills during their first job search. And I'm sure that number is even lower, understandably lower, at high school or secondary education level. But do you believe that students at those ages are gaining skills, and how can they prove it? And then how do they internalize that to be able to gain that voice for their own skills?
Yeah, I think it's even more challenging and important at a younger age. I'm not sure how much you deal with sort of 15, 16-year-olds, but we actually used to have it in schools, program called the Truth Project, but and within that, we would actually ask the students, going, what are your skills? And even more simply, what are you good at? And it's very difficult for a young person to articulate that. And so out of necessity, we actually had to sort of flip on the head to basically get the same outcome, but asked in a different way. It was just, what do you enjoy doing?
Yes.
Yeah. And that can often lead to, whether it's a skill or whatever you want to call it. But that was a way to cut through because, not generalizing, but like a lot of young people can't clearly articulate what skills they have because it hasn't been in that context. Like there's no context of, how learning or experiences turn into skills at that age. But when you do flip it and sort of give some examples, so, if you ask them, some very standard ones come up, they like playing PlayStation, like playing sport, things like that. And so we'd ask that, they're like, why do you like playing sport? Is it because you like to be in a team environment and you're collaborating with other people? Is it that you like to win and that's the thrill that you get? Or is it that you just like to be, part of something bigger than yourself? And so there's sort of different ways of breaking down that. And even, playing PlayStation, which for the parents listening, like that's there's a lot of there's a lot of justification you can give when you're talking skills. So yeah, look, it's long story short, it is a challenge with the work we do is trying to help young people. And I think there's ways of getting around it. It's stuff we do, but there's amazing research that's come out of, ways to extract intrinsic values and how that can be used for career discussions and things like that. So I guess the thing I'd probably recommend, which I do, and to that point, I think it's coming from government and things like that, but starting that conversation of skills much earlier, I think is very important because my view is skills are the universal language. So the problem that schools have often, that from our experience, when dealing with industry, is you're talking different languages. So industry is talking skills. Like they will go, are you competent this? Are you capable of being an employee, really?
Right.
Schools are very qualification based. They're talking, syllabus, academic outcomes, transcripts and stuff. So, which is cool. Like that's the, like, I don't think we necessarily want to change that, but the bridging of the two, which I think is very important, I believe is skills. So if you can start to not change, but like augment and link together the academic side of schools, and the good example is the ATAR, to skills, win-win. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love those examples that you gave. And one the deputy principal of one of the schools that we work with shared how some of her students might work at McDonald's and say, but I don't have any skills. I'm like, really? Like how can you not see that teamwork, collaboration, working under pressure, communication skills, dealing with stress and some resilience, all of these skills. But again, they don't have that familiarity or expressing it, and certainly from a curricular perspective as well. I did well. I got a good grade, strong marks in this subject. But what is that reflecting? What are the skills that enabled you to perform well in there? So again, I think it's been great to see the groundswell of interest in skills and to your building on your earlier comments around vocational versus universities, and skills or competency used to be a bad word. You would never say that in a university context, but now, the leading universities they've gotten onto it. Well, of course, they're building skills, right? As well as becoming career ready, but they absolutely are developing skills, and high schools are doing that as well. And so it's really been fascinating seeing that transition, and for us, each playing our own part, however small, in helping to support that. And I think it's incredibly important from an equity perspective as well. So if you think of those coming from a lower socioeconomic background or other disadvantaged upbringing where they may not have heard these skills or profession, so it's they may not realize the skills they have. They may not realize the pathways that are there that are open to them. So. Coming back to research, and you've referenced some external research. I know you've also conducted a lot of research yourselves and partnered with different organizations. Can you share any some of the more recent or more insightful, or what are you seeing from your research?
Yeah, so I think it's up to 55,000 students who have researched. So, I've had answer our surveys over the last 5 6 years, and we've been very pointed at that school to work transition problem, and probably even more specifically from a student point of view, understanding the decision making process. But yeah, to your point, we've worked with multiple federal government departments, state, some large organisations, but largely we do it for ourselves. We want to just understand the problem. We actually make it all publicly available. The ones that we can, that aren't contracted.
Sure. Yes.
But to that point where, I sort of have the same view as you, is, we're one part of the solution, but, it's a big problem that requires multiple awesome companies, awesome people coming together to help solve. And so, one of our more famous ones called After the ATAR. So that's probably been published a fair bit. And again, you can download it for free. But the main trend out of that is pretty consistent year on year. So there's some questions we track year on year for more longitudinal studies. But for example, still every year, over 72% of young people plan on going to uni. And again, that's fine. But if you start to dig a little bit deeper underneath that, a lot of that's a very unconsidered decision. It's going, this is what is expected, or, it's what my friends are doing, or, I just can't think about that now. I want to focus on my ATAR. I'll worry about it when I get to uni. So, which is sort of conflicting, because if you look at some headline stats, there's multiple things where you go, so many young people are confused about what they want to do after school. We've had 43% of young people having no idea, sort of things. So these really big stats. But when you drill a little bit underneath it, is, so for example, if almost half of young people didn't know what they want to do, if you actually start digging into that, they sort of do. They're sort of going, well, yeah, I'm going to uni. I just don't know if I'm doing X, Y, Z. And so it's been an interesting, exploration for us to actually get to what's happening. And what we've found is really, it's an education challenge and also opportunity. So that's why I'm a really big advocate for getting careers into the classroom, into the curriculum, because what you're talking about before is even when you're learning maths, you're learning skills, and skills are very, very tightly related to careers. And so the more that we take it as a whole school approach and a really economic and social responsibility to actually have this, because everyone finishes school. So the one constant of everyone at school is everyone finishes, and what starts off as a small problem becomes a significantly bigger problem for everyone. When you talk about money and social impacts and things like that. So in terms of the research, when we look at one of the biggest opportunities, it is the education piece. And we had a separate stat, which was really widely published a couple of years ago, which is an Australian apprentice can be $150,000 ahead of a university graduate when you take into consideration wages earned and money spent. And for context, I was a carpentry apprentice in Queensland and a arts degree at Sydney University. So we just chose some random ones. And we put that in front of the audience. And just that one stat increased consideration of an apprenticeship by over 60%. So we've got multiple data points that goes into, it's not rocket science in terms of actually having major impacts. It's just getting to them at the right time in the right place, probably through a trusted vehicle. And I think it's one of the most obvious things that needs to be done that I can think of. That's probably one of the more interesting parts of the research.
That is fascinating, and just thinking from personal experience, when I first moved to Australia 20 years ago, I was shocked just at the differences. As much as we think the models are fairly similar between the two countries, that the students were expected to know not only which institution they wanted to go to, but what program they wanted to go to at the age of 17. And certainly 20 years ago, they didn't have a year 13 to be able to explore, to get that research. And so these are massive decisions that they are making, or they previously were making without enough information. So, and certainly when we think about the cost of university in America versus here, it's on a whole different scale. So in the U.S., although we're seeing it definitely and dramatically increase here as well, but there's been double-digit decline in percentage of 17-year-olds who are planning to go to college or university in America and partially because of the cost, partially because of unclear return on investment. They don't know what skills they're going to get out of it. So there is a very critical education process about education and about their pathways. And coming back to America, the concept, the topic of America. Now, and you and I have had the opportunity to collaborate on several major initiatives, such as a learner passport, a robust learner passport solution. But I know you spent some time in the U.S. recently, and you're sporting a cowboy hat. So yeah, would love to get your take, as an Australian in America for a number of weeks, talking to various educators. What similarities and as well as differences do you see between the two different models and markets?
We're really fortunate. We went to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest EDU, and the main objective was to understand the problem. I think we've been around it quite heavily in Australia, and I guess understand the structural dynamics. Is how applicable is that to the rest of the world? And I guess long story short is like almost every economy location that we look at, everyone's struggling with the same problem. So I do think it's a universal challenge that countries and governments and schools and educators are going to go through, is how to deal with the future of work and this changing dynamic of a career, what being an employee is, what whether it's gig economy, what new technologies are introducing. Like there's so many different inputs that are happening that I think everyone's trying to figure it out a bit. And it's so material on the economy, is trying to get ahead of this stuff. And so it was really awesome to see what people are talking about and challenges and things. I think the call out is I think Australia is actually quite advanced in this topic, from a product and organizational standpoint, but also I think from a government level. I actually feel like from the Commonwealth government down to states, if you think about from the Joyce Review, how that's mobilized into the skills orgs, to the jobs and skills councils, to some of the programs that's going across different state departments. I think really probably one of the leaders that I've come across. And so, it was interesting talking to people. I think people actually recognize that a little bit. A lot of people are quite curious about what's happening in Australia. We've got a really strong and highly respected education system, both higher education and the vocational system. So I think we're in a very fortunate position to take the lead on a global scale to say, this is what the opportunity is. And, I think that's the thing, is to solve this, it's really based on partnerships. And, it's bringing together both, private and public and, scale up, startup, a whole bunch of different organizations together to help solve it. And I think the appetite's there, I think, for most people in the market. And I guess, again, the being in this space, people want it to succeed. So I think it was good to just get some validation that, it's what we're doing is important and needs to be solved.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agreed. And it is interesting. And I was over in Atlanta for the Digital Credentials Summit, and they were talking up the advantages that Australia has and what we've been able to do as a country and a centralized approach. But then, interestingly, having discussions here where we've co-sponsored or co-hosted skills meetups of gathering of government and academic and industry and learners, and hear people say, "Oh, the U.S. is so advanced," or they have the scale, they have all these other advantages. And so, but clearly the message is we can learn from each other. And while the language, the terminology, the concept of a learner passport here might correlate to portrait of a graduate, which is the phrase that we're talking about previously, is something that we're certainly seeing come up a lot more in the U.S. but ultimately it is about creating that very rich profile for the learner to support whichever pathway or pathways through their life that they're going to pursue. So I agree. I think I'm very excited about the opportunities in America, but also for the cross fertilization and picking the best ideas from both countries or from all around the world and putting them to use, which is something that Year 13 has definitely been very successful at. So now I know I've taken up a lot of your time. Final question for you. So with the history that you laid out for us with Year 13 and 1.5 million students, learners on your platform, and the platform itself is free for the students to use, right? So if they want to come on, they can sign up and come onto the platform. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a free public facing, but we also have a paid school version, but it's very accessible.
Yeah, which is great. So year13.com.au. And so, that combination, great for the student, great for the schools as well, and obviously very helpful for parents as well. So looking ahead, what are you excited about in the future for the roadmap for Year 13?
Yeah, so really, I guess it's helping solve that school to work transition journey, and I think getting to a little bit more scale does help to a certain extent to start to bring together the ecosystem. I think that's the thing. The opportunity is all the stakeholders so distributed. If we can sort of bring everyone together and mobilize everyone on the sort of same direction, that's where really meaningful change I think will happen at a sort of state and federal level. Where we really see the business is actually taking, and making a decent dent into, productivity growth and also, some core social metrics that we want to, that we sort of track. And so, we firmly believe that if you help solve that school transition process, that really leads to tangible economic and social uplift for any state. So, whereas we, have moved it from, individual customer groups of like schools and students and industry and things, it's how, 1 + 1 = 3 sort of thing. And that's where we're looking at going, can we, really show evidence that this, is needed? And, again, doesn't need to be Year 13, but if we can be a, beacon of every sort of school and government should be thinking about a, high quality career education, school transition, strategy, then that's sort of doing a job.
No, an incredibly important job, and so thank you for your time today, Will, and thank you for all the amazing work that Year 13 is doing for millions of learners. So very exciting, and can't wait to hear more of your ongoing success.
Appreciate it, Dan, and likewise, I love Edelex and wish you guys every success as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Will. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this Edelex podcast episode. Don't forget to follow us in your podcast app so you don't miss a thing. And be sure to visit our website at edelex.com to learn more.